Cute Rainbow Neko is the name. People used to call me Pinky. I'm short or fun-sized like my husband likes to call it. My husband is the daring, loyal, courageous Prince Uzumaru Naito. Enough with this romantic stuff. But have you ever wondered what my life was like before I became that handsome hunks princess? I'll tell you everything that happened. I was born with bright blue eyes that shined like a porcelain doll's glass eyes. I had bangs upon my forehead and bright, long golden hair, along with rainbow cat ears and tail. They named me Kawaii Niji Sakura Neko. They called me Neko for short. I was born in my hometown, the Rainbow Kingdom. I don't remember about my childhood. I was treated like a princess. My mother and father were the king and queen of the Rainbow Kingdom. All I remember is I used to cry a lot, and I was always hyper and hungry. Nothing was really dark in my childhood till I was 10. I remember hearing screaming, fighting, and death. I used to have terrifying dreams of people's heads being chopped off. It was fine, though. I got over it as I grew up. By the time I was at least 5, my mother was pregnant. I remember at 4 in the morning her water broke. We rushed to the hospital. I remembered the rose my mom gave to me in the garden one time at the castle. She said to me, handing it to my tiny hands, "Keep this safe, Neko. Don't let anyone harm this or break this rose. It will save someone's life someday." I smiled and I thanked her for the gift. It shed petals every night after Mother read my bedtime story. The story she read was called The Rose Prince. I had such a childhood crush on the guy. I had dreams of him, the beautiful black jet hair and his dark blue eyes, like an ocean. I felt like I could be sucked in his eyes. In the dreams, right before he kissed me, I would wake up. I used to be so frustrated about it. But I would look up at the rose and it would be bloomed again. It would glow in the morning. I would kiss the rose and get ready for dancing lessons. Anyway, I brought the rose to the hospital. Daddy told me to sit at the bench outside. I lifted up my head and saw a boy. He looked exactly like the Rose Prince, except my age. He looked like he was dying, weak or hurt. The petals on the rose were shedding at the time. I sat next to him and put my arm around him. "Why are you crying? What's your name?" He picked up his head. Tears rushed down his cheeks. "Here, I was going to give this rose back to my mother for good luck, but I see you need it more." I gave the rose to him and hugged him. His eyes widened and his cheeks turned pink. "I promise I'll be the best friend you ever had and never leave your side." The rose glowed more than it had ever glowed before at that moment. Me and the boy played on the playground. He left after a while with his father. One hand grasped the rose and the other holding his father's hand. My mother had the baby. It was a boy. She named him Miyaku. Miyaku grew faster than me. By the time I was 6, he was already 12. I think his growth spurt was more faster than usual from a birth defect. He had blonde hair with bangs and blue eyes, a little darker than mine. It was a dark part of my childhood. Miyaku used to lock me in a room and rape me, abuse me, whip me. My mother never knew about this. My brother was terrible. I tried to love him and I still cared about him. He did drugs, smoked all sorts of suspicious things. I was forced to swallow some pills one day. No matter what, I always acted happy around my friends in school. Or by my parents. I smiled, but I wasn't really happy. By the time I was 13, my parents left for a while on a trip. It was a rainy day. I cried a little as they kissed my cheeks and got into the taxi. The person they left with me was Miyaku. Like always, he did drugs, had sex with strangers that I didn't even know, and drank sometimes. He would teach me how to use drugs and what good beer to pick from the store. Sooner or later, we were poor. I was forced to become a hooker and support my brother. If I didn't, not only he would starve, but I would starve also. I went clubbing and drank also. I was so confused at the time. I didn't know what to do. I cried every night, not knowing what to do with my life. Miyaku kicked me in the streets with no food or decent clothing. I sat on the bench, shivering. A boy came over to me and put his jacket around my shoulders. I turned my head and he smiled. He was the same boy I saw from the bench, the guy who looked like the Rose Prince. I started crying and I hugged him. He held my head to his shoulder. "Come with me. You can't catch a cold," he said softly. I couldn't walk, so he carried me to his castle. Roses were surrounded everywhere. I fell asleep, and he sneaked me into his bedroom. He made me drink medicine and then tucked me in his bed. The next morning, I woke up and saw him sleeping in a chair next to me. I made breakfast for him and left. He grabbed my hand at the door and held it. He got on his knees and kissed my hand. He begged me to stay. He told his father about me, and then they gave me clothes, gold, and diamonds. I lived with him and his parents till I was 16. I learned how to ballroom dance better with the prince. His parents found out about me being the princess of the Rainbow Kingdom and kicked me out. I remember the screaming, the begging, and the glass breaking. I still had my dresses and my riches from the Rose Kingdom, though. A big war happened with the Rainbow Kingdom and the Rose Kingdom. People died, and it was terrible. I had to watch all of it. I was actually a part of it. I had to kill so many people. The next day, I woke up in a field of dead people. I called for my mom and dad. After a while, I found them dead under some rubble. I cried hysterically. I was the last of the warriors in the war. Rose Guards came by and pointed their sword axes at me. A person blocked them from hurting me. A handsome prince that looked exactly like the Rose Prince from my story. I realized it was still the same boy on the bench from when I was little. He said, "Wait a second," and crouched down to me. He stroked my hair and looked straight into my eyes, and he stood up and told them not to strike me. I hugged the prince's leg, thanking him and begging. The guards went to pull me off, but the prince stopped him again. The prince asked me if I was wounded. I was bloody all over, cuts, bruises, you name it. He brought me in a little cottage that survived the war. All the mansions were destroyed. Even though the war looked tough, he was dressed up like a normal prince, although his suit seemed a bit ripped and his cape is bloody. He told me his name. His name is Uzumaro Naito. He did not admit seeing me in the past, but he did say I looked familiar. I asked him why he saved me, but he did not reply to me. After everything was rebuilt, he invited me to be a maid in his mansion, and I accepted his invite.